Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another issue of Nerd Nation. We are in episode, I almost said episode, issue number 28 at this point. And we are here to give you kind of a new thing that we're doing for the next 4 weeks. We are going to talk about the decades of the last, 80s, 90s, tens, zeros, 10s,
90s, and today.
And we're gonna revisit those decades of comic book movies. With me, as always, I have Gio and Keith. Yes, I cannot tell you how happy I am just that I got that right. But yeah, we are here to talk a little bit about the decades. We're gonna do a 4-part series, and obviously, we're gonna start from the furthest back, which would be the 80s. Now, Keith and I were alive in the 80s. Gio was not. I only got 4 months of it, so I can't talk too much. But I was there for the earthquake, so that counts. Yeah, we're gonna revisit the 80s. There are a lot of movies that you will probably be familiar with when we talk about them and you hear the names pop up. So like I said, this one will be the 80s. Next week we'll go to 90s. Then after that, zeros, whatever, 2000s.
Yeah.
And then we will hit the 2010s. So yeah. So how you guys doing first off?
Pretty good. Just staying home, staying safe, and I'm gonna be that way regardless of how much of the country reopens until I'm called back to work.
Fair enough. Keith,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Yeah, still working. Yeah, I'm essential, so I've still been working the whole time. So
Yeah.
relatively the same for me. Except
Do you get paid like an essential, or is it just
someone
just a
asked me
phrase
today.
that they use?
Someone asked me that today if I was getting hazard pay. I was like, no, we don't.
Costco's doing it.
Are they really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, I don't. That's interesting. No,
I don't know.
Into that.
Yeah. So glad you. Oh no, you have the kids at home though for school.
Yeah.
You're a teacher
That's
now.
the big
Also.
change. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Welcome to my life. Except yours are going to be all around you all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like I said, this is going to be just a little bit of a discussion and talking about the 80s, revisiting it for comic book movies in that era. So I mean, we have a lot of recognizable names from this time period. Just name off a few of those. You've got Flash Gordon. You have Swamp Thing, Superman 2, Batman 1989, Howard the Duck. So there are a few that are easily recognizable. Ones that a lot of people have seen. Then, there are ones that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that movie. But there's a good few that we can recognize just by someone saying. A lot of pop culture movies referencing them. Flash Gordon. First thing comes to my mind is Ted. When I hear Flash Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're gonna just go into it now. If you know me, I'm the resident. What's the word? The one that hasn't seen a lot of these types of movies. I personally was like, I'm gonna do my research for some of these, and went and watched Superman the movie and Batman 1989, only to realize that Superman the movie is 1978.
78.
Yeah,
So blew that one, but I was there for Batman. But yeah, you guys, I know whenever someone talks about the 80s movies, immediately the one that gets thrown out first is, well, in my opinion, probably Superman 2. Can we agree?
I'd say that a little bit more so the Batman 1989 Burton one, only because Batman in the last 15 years has become so increasingly popular, with the Nolan films. And,
That's true.
to an extent, Ben Affleck, his take on Batman and Batman v Superman, for as much as that movie was divisive, it still gave us a different, and for many, a better version of Batman. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Now, from what I would still say, a lot of people still refer to Superman 2 as one of the best of the Superman movies that we have out of all of them. And
It's
that
my
movie,
favorite of the Reeves, Donna Reeves. Well, they only did 2, but it's my favorite out of Christopher Reeves' 4 movies, which we'll bring up the other ones later, 3 and 4.
yeah. But yeah, let's just, I mean, that one is pretty much for the most part. Well, I mean, we have Flash Gordon in that area too. So let's just go, since we already mentioned Superman 2. Yeah. What do we think? Still like that movie? Still a good movie? I haven't seen it, so I can't compare it to very much. But I know immediately when I mentioned this time period, Keith, Jake, and Gio all immediately went Superman 2. And so, yeah, tell me, for someone like me that does not know it, tell me a little bit about it and tell me why.
Well, Keith, I want to get your experience, because I wasn't born in the 80s. So, what it was like watching that movie in theaters or at home on VHS, which is a video home system, a rectangular video cassette that you put into a VCR. That's what we're talking about there.
Keith, I'm not convinced that Gio's not just doing this to age us. And
no, I'm talking about the kids who might be watching
this whole series is just aging you and I.
Hey, I was around for VHSs too. Okay, but before you do that, Keith, let's just real quick, and Brian, you can kind of talk about this too. The comic book movies in the 80s, comic book movies, the genre went into the 80s with some momentum, because Superman the movie, the first one, was a surprise. It was a surprise hit, and it was groundbreaking in a lot of ways for visual effects during that time. And the movie was a success. It was Superman unlike anybody had seen for that time. Christopher Reeve did an amazing job. You had Gene Hackman in there, and then you had Richard Donner, who clearly had a passion for the character and understood what we love about Superman. And Brian, just you could talk a little bit about that. Just your thoughts on the movie.
For me, this is not there. I mean, there are ones that I definitely remember in the 90s hearing about, because I was born September of 89. So I barely count as this 80s guru. But I do remember like the popularity of Superman, and I remember Christopher Reeves is Superman. He's the embodiment of Superman. He's the best Superman. I remember all that. It was Christopher Reeves was literally, his name was attached to Superman. It was literally like Superman, Christopher Reeves. Like the names were all pretty much one. I mean, obviously Gene Hackman being in it was a big deal. Yeah, I mean, and then I just watched it for the first time like a week ago, and I was actually pretty impressed by it. Like when I was like, in my mind, I thought this was like 81 and it's 78. For it being a 78, like that wasn't bad. Like that was pretty good. Like the beginning of the movie, I was drawn into it. So I can only imagine what Superman 2 was if people are still like, go watch that one. So for me, I just remember that time period. I shouldn't say that time period. I just remember in the 90s when I was younger and comic book characters and stuff, Christopher Reeves his name was always attached when spoken of Superman. So yeah. What about you, Keith?
Yeah, well, excuse me. I actually wrote a paper about Superman when I was in one of my classes in film school. It was media, one of my media classes. It was about the marketing behind it, and they shot them both at the same time.
Yeah, they shot them simultaneously.
Yeah,
Donner had both scripts, right?
So, well, the script was actually written by Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather.
Oh,
yeah,
wow!
And he had written it as far back, I think it was like 74 or 75, something like that. And it was initially, check this out, the initial script was 500 pages.
Holy! For just one or for both?
I think it was for both. Yeah.
Still.
So yeah, and another just quick crazy fact. They released it 6 months earlier overseas.
6 months?
That's right. Yeah. They released it first.
December.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it came out. Superman 2, came out in December of '79.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I saw 1980 and then 1981, but then I noticed it was released earlier in 1980 and then 81 the U.S. got it.
They were trying to get some of their. They said they wanted to make some of their money back before they released it here. So anyway, but all that aside,
jeez, I was making a big deal the other day about them saying Black Widow's going to be released in Europe a week early. I can't even imagine.
Right, I know, right?
Half a year, I'd be pissed.
6 whole months, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you could never do that now. Because back then it was easy to kind of keep any spoilers from stuff from coming out about it, but that could never happen now. If the movie came out a day ahead of time, you got to worry about spoilers.
Oh, there'd be leaks, yeah.
But yeah, Superman, and so I was born in '79, so I don't even remember. I remember seeing Superman 2. I can't quite pinpoint when. I was definitely a little kid, but I definitely remember seeing Superman 3 in the theater, and 3 and 4. By that time, I think I was like maybe 4 or 5, seeing Superman 3, and Superman 4, I was like 7 or 8. But I had seen Superman 2 several times, but I hadn't seen it in years until maybe a few years ago because they had all popped up on Netflix. And they definitely still, I think, hold up. The thing about the comic movies of the 80s were at that time, and Warner Brothers had been all through the 80s developing Batman as well. It went through a whole bunch of stuff because there's a whole bunch of silly stuff they wanted to do with it, which is why it took so long. But yeah, comic book movies at that time were being made by people who grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 50s and 60s, reading them then, and somewhat in the 70s as well.
The Action Comics,
right. People who grew up
Detective Comics
era,
yeah.
When they still, that's why that kind of campiness is a lot of that is there. That's a whole lot of what, like I said, and we'll get to Batman later, but a lot of what Warner Brothers wanted to do with Batman was that, like what you saw in the 60s TV series and with the Super Friends animated series when it was a lot more lighter fare. Excuse me, until it took the real change. I think it came, Frank Miller changed comic books and had a big part in what we see in comic book movies today.
Yes, he did.
And with the Dark Knight Returns,
and his Daredevil run,
definitely changed back. Yeah, Daredevil as well, which I think was right before that. I think Dark Knight Returns was 86. I feel like Daredevil was a little before.
I think 84. I think 85.
Yeah, it was definitely earlier, to where they were more kind of. We had like the Iron Man, the alcoholism thing, and a few other stories like that, but making it a little more a little more edgier, a little more. I hate to say crass, but just taking it a little more mature themed with some of these characters that had been largely kid friendly. Like the last stuff, comic books were looked at as just kid fare, especially throughout the 60s and 70s.
And that's a big part of Superman too.
Superman, I was just about to say, there's a lot of that with Superman as well because of the way he's. My issues looking back on it, I think it definitely holds up. But I think that the Superman was just like it was just more like it's silly. We don't have to put as much thought into it. Certainly not the way they do today. Because if you really look at it, like a lot of it is kind of like, well, this doesn't really. Just the fact that him flying around the world and making time, either a lot of debate of whether he actually went back in time or whether he actually reversed time. I don't really know, but stuff like that where you can just it's not a power that Superman can do. Like it's not something that I think they just made him give him anything. Like just let him. He's Superman. He can do anything. And there's a lot of that with these two movies. Well, all four of them.
I think that for me, growing up, that was probably a play into why I didn't care for Superman growing up because he had every power. He was invincible.
You're exactly
Nothing
right.
could really hurt him. He was the god of all gods when it comes to comic books. And for me, growing up younger, that didn't appeal to me. And I definitely saw that a little bit in the Superman, the movie, which obviously wasn't the 80s, but I can see where that might have pushed things forward like that. Like, I mean, he could do whatever the hell he wanted in that movie. Like, from what I saw, I mean, like you said, he went around the globe in reverse time. Like, okay, like
what?
He can do it. Yeah, I was like, he can do this now. It's just like it always seems like he was able to do something more and more and more. So I don't know, that could have been an effect moving forward that may negatively impacted.
Because I know that. I know for sure. Like I know my dad. We were here talking to my dad about it, and the stuff. Just watching it, like the effects and stuff, and you look at it now. Obviously, it's dated, but at the time, it was blowing people away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can imagine.
It just him flying, and it looks. You look at it now, it looks kind of slow, and it looks. But just seeing him.
Well, what impressed me was the Fortress of Solitude.
Sure.
That like opening, I was like, even for me, I thought this was 80s, but it really 78, which even makes it more impressive because I was like, that looks pretty good for the 80s. Yep. And then to find out it's 78, I was like, that was really good for that time period.
Yeah, right.
So,
and Christopher Reeve and you guys both talk about it. I mean, he plays him with such earnestness and such very Superman is an aspirational character, and I think Christopher Reeve he nailed that. And so. To the point where it's a lot of what affects people's opinion of Superman today, like particularly like Henry Cavill's performance, because he's not Christopher Reeve, and he's meant to be kind of slightly different. But when we think of Superman, we think of that Christopher Reeve portrayal because he does it so well, and you get that kind of he's all world, but all American, that whole truth, justice, American way, saving cats out of the trees and saving, stopping the car from crashing and whatever. Reeve's portrayal is certainly is iconic and synonymous with the character as anybody we've had in any comic movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because for me, I could see certain things that was very similar to Henry Cavill's. Like, I couldn't really, like, I'm sure there was, but like, I didn't get very much of Brandon Routh's Superman, like, with it. I'm not saying anything bad about his portrayal, but his seemed a little bit different whereas Henry Cavill's kind of seems pretty close to the Christopher Reeve one, where it was like a very like trying to figure things out, like, you know, like that type portrayal.
See, I think I'm kind of the opposite on you, where I
really?
I think Ralph was much closer to Reeves. I think initially that Ralph one was supposed to be after Superman 2.
Yeah, it was.
We're always heard. Right?
Yeah, it was very much in the same vein. It's practically a love letter to Reeves and Donner's Superman, and kind of in that, you know,
sort
world,
continuity,
right, where he's gone and then he comes back. You know,
the problem is it didn't give him anything to really do or say. Like, he didn't say a whole lot in that film,
right?
So it's kind of hard to really gauge it. I thought he was pretty good, actually, but yeah, I'm opposite. I think he's very close to Reeves. Again, I like Cavill's version, but it's just a lot. But it's just very different. You know, it's a very different portrayal because it's kind of a different take on the story. You know, but we don't want to. I don't want to jump ahead to that, but
no, you're fine.
Yeah, what do you think about the villains? Did you like? Oh no, you didn't watch 2. I just forgot. I keep forgetting.
No, I know. That's why I'm.
Well, they're in it. I mean, they're in Superman. They show up in the beginning.
Well, yeah,
I liked Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was he. That was a good Lex Luthor. I liked him.
You think?
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Okay. I do not.
No,
I love really. I love him. That's a silly Lex Luthor. Yeah.
I liked what was Miss Tishmacher.
She's good, right? That's
every time she came up, I was like cracking up. I loved the Lois Lane.
She's great.
Loved her.
Great Margot Kidder.
She was fantastic.
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, like that's exactly how I would imagine Lois Lane, like to a T almost. Like I was very impressed. Honestly, more by her than probably a lot of it, because I was like, whoa, that's exactly how I would imagine Lois Lane to be. Because we've had so many different portrayals of her, but that was to me almost kind of like the dead on.
Yeah.
And I like Jimmy Olsen too. I like that, whoever that was.
Well, he's great, right? Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I didn't mind Hackman that much. Yeah, not too bad. I don't know how he is moving forward, but you know, so he gets goofier. See, now I wouldn't. Yeah, see, I don't know how much I would want more goofy, but yeah, I didn't mind it. Anything else before we go on to a different one?
I mean, this movie's most famously known for Richard Donner getting the boot, and this is probably the earliest recording of, or well documented, of studio meddling. I mean, 30 years later, and Warner Brothers is still doing the same shit. You know, it's ridiculous. But I mean,
they've got a history.
When people think of Superman 2, it's amazing how I think it's the best out of the 4 that Reeves has done. But it's famous for the behind the scenes drama and what went on, and how that movie managed to be the success it ended up being, and then to 25 years later get a Donner cut of Superman 2, and get to see his true vision for that movie. But it definitely was a great start for, you know, the 80s for comic book movies. You know, Flash Gordon obviously has its fans. I'm not really too big on the character myself, but I recognize its fan base, and you know how much that movie meant to fans, because it was done pretty well, you know, from what I've read and from my memories of watching a movie, you know, as a kid, you know, being entertained. And like Keith said, you know, these movies, them being 30 years ago, they're going to look dated, you know, but the main thing is, these movies, their contributions to today's comic book genre. And, I think Superman 2 definitely stands as one of the more impactful, influential movies for today.
Yeah.
And probably for Warner Brothers too.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Man.
Yeah.
Gene Hackman, just to touch on Gene Hackman really quick, he actually, when Donner was fired, he actually left.
Yep. He did not come back. Yeah.
He didn't come back. A lot of that footage you see in it is actually recycled from Superman 1.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Hackman.
Interesting.
Yeah, he quit. He's like, I signed to work up with Donner, not this other guy. Richard Lester, I think is the guy.
I think his name is Lester. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Who I think he definitely directed Superman 4. I'm not sure if he did 3, but so yeah, it's a crazy story. Like you said, the production behind that movie, though. Both those movies.
Yeah. So next, again, this is one I'm not familiar with that much, but this was also in 1980. Was Flash Gordon. This is one of those ones that I feel like gets referenced a lot. It's one of those ones that, like we said earlier, you see it referenced with like Ted, where it gets pulled. Like first off, for someone that has not seen that movie, I hear that theme song and I know instantly what it's from.
I was just about to mention the soundtrack is probably
so. Yeah, exactly. So while it may not be like a revered movie, it's very much a pop culture type movie, because I mean, you hear the words Flash, you're immediately going to go, like, yeah, exactly. And for me, I haven't seen the movie and I know exactly what it is, what it's talking about. Gio, have you seen it?
While back. It's been a minute, but it's just one of those movies that I saw it a couple times as a kid, and I wasn't really glued to it. And I think what's funny is, all right, so I was more of Star Wars than Flash Gordon, and the funny story is that George Lucas wanted to do Flash Gordon, but because he wasn't able to, he instead wrote Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Well, thank God.
This movie actually should be appreciated by all geek fans out there, nerd fans, Nerd Nation, because this movie helped us get Star Wars A New Hope. So,
the opening crawl. The opening crawl was based on, they got that from the old Flash Gordon serials from the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
That would kind of retell the story of what's been happening right before you see the stuff on screen. That was lifted that directly from Flash Gordon. And I haven't seen this movie. I think I was maybe 5 years old when I saw this, and I just like barely remember it. I know he played for the Jets, New York Jets. So
I didn't know Flash Gordon was actually a polo player, so it makes sense why they changed that to football.
It made it football for the
it's more popular,
This movie, this version is definitely wildly different from the original serials and the old comics.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I mean, it's a massive cult following over the years.
Huge.
I think a lot of that because of the Queen soundtrack, of course. I know a lot of people regard it as like one of the great Queen albums. Just the album alone, just the movie aside, like people just look at the soundtrack like it's one of the best albums ever. And Max von Sydow is
one of my early introductions, unknowingly, to Max von Sydow.
Yeah, yeah, right. With the little mustache, and probably not something you'd get away with today, casting. Kind of early versions of whitewashing. Well, I mean, I've been doing it forever in Hollywood, but
they're still doing it.
Still, yeah. But he was as iconic as a villain, and but yeah, a movie I haven't seen in 35 years.
Ming the Merciless.
Merciless, yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, it that one is just like, even if you haven't seen it, chances are you know something from it, just because it's very much a pop culture cult film, very much of the 80s. So
People
yeah,
trying to remake it forever. I know.
I remember a couple of times growing up hearing like they're gonna remake it, and it's
hearing rumor. Yeah, we've heard Robert Rodriguez was going to do one. I've heard I think I want to say Kevin Smith. I'm not 100% sure, but
I would trust Kevin Smith to bring that to life.
Yeah, sure, maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, who knows? So we're gonna move on a little bit. Do we want to touch on Swamp Thing? No.
Didn't really.
Awful. Terrible movie.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where watching it as a kid, like I knew it was bad when I was a kid. I saw this. I'm like, this is terrible. Reading about him in comics and stuff until years later, and then I realized, okay, Swamp Thing's actually a pretty cool character, but that movie made me like not interested in him at all.
Scary at all? No,
I don't think so. It's just
for the time
being. Maybe for some like little kids, it's just very one of those ones where you can see all the obvious like
props and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not very good.
That's fair. So then we will move out of 82. 83, we've got Superman 3. This obviously you guys were talking about. This is not done by the last two movies' directors. Do you want to touch on this one really quick?
Richard Donner, didn't come back for this one, and honestly, unless Christopher Reeve got some sort of creative input, he wasn't going to come back either. But you can't have Superman without Christopher Reeves for that time. This movie sucks. This movie, oh my god! I mean,
I would argue
drunk Superman.
Yeah,
we're spoiling. I don't care. Here we go.
I don't mind that actually. I remember seeing that. We watched those. I showed those to my kids probably about 5 years ago, and it's bad. Let's don't make no mistake. But I remember watching that and just the idea of him having to fight himself. They referenced it in the CW the crossover this past year.
Oh.
Where he was like, it's not the first time I had to fight a weird, crazy version of myself or something like that. When the Brandon Routh had to fight the new one. So yeah, they actually reference that. Where Superman gets drunk and drunk means Superman. He separates from Clark Kent or whatever somehow. They don't even explain how that happens. What that was. Was it even real?
Well, now I'm seeing everywhere. I again haven't seen it. I've been typing it up just to kind of look, and everything I'm seeing, Richard Pryor's all over it.
That's literally about to be my next.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean. There you go. Okay. There's your segue.
It's more of it's a Richard Pryor movie than.
Is it?
Yeah, which is great. He's great in it. He's very funny. It's Richard Pryor, but it's a goofy. It's more of a Richard Pryor comedy than anything. The villains are weird. There's this weird. Remember Gio, the weird robot lady. The lady gets turned into a robot somehow. And
that
was kind of scary.
Was creepy when you were a kid, because the way she screams and then and then it's quiet and then it's just she comes out and it's just like
that terrified me when I was little, man. That actually scared me. But,
fun fact: Richard Pryor thought the screenplay was terrible and only accepted it because it was a $5 million paycheck. So,
right, yeah.
I would take that and walk away too.
Yeah, right.
Jesus.
Lois Lane wasn't in it. They had it was Lana Lang was the lady, or I think Margaret Kidder. I think she was briefly in it. very briefly. But
So she expressed how disappointed she was in Richard Donner's firing, that they only gave her 12 lines and only less than 5 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
There you go. Yeah. And they did it again in the next one. in Superman 4 as well. She was barely in that too. So.
Interesting.
Yeah, Annette O'Toole was in it. Played Lana Lang. She plays Mrs. Kent on Smallville. So she was in it.
Awesome. So then we move on. 1984. The only real one would be Supergirl. Again, I don't know very much about it. 1984's Supergirl. Yeah, not too much to talk about, really.
Another one I remember thinking, oh, cool, Supergirl. There's a Supergirl. I didn't know that. And then, yeah, it's Helen Slater, she's on the TV series, right? I think she plays her mom or something like that, right? Isn't that, yeah. She's good. It's one where she's good, but yeah, it's not a good movie.
This is definitely the Bronze Age of comic book movies.
Yeah.
You know, there's like too huge of a gap between good movies. So,
yeah. 85, nothing really. 86, we get Howard the Duck.
I saw Howard the Duck in the theater.
Okay. I know, obviously.
On VHS. No,
oh yeah,
that's it. That's all I need to see.
I haven't seen this movie. I've seen pictures, stuff like I feel like I've seen enough from just what I've seen.
Marvel. This is the history that Marvel kind of wants to keep.
Yeah, I figured. I could tell. Keith, go for it.
You know, well, listen, George Lucas he saw this. I know the story is that I think he saw this back in the 70s. He saw this in a comic book shop one day and was like, oh, I'm going to make this. Just never kind of got around to it. He was shopping around Star Wars. You know, when he was trying to shop around Star Wars and people kept turning him down.
Yeah.
I think he got the rights to it. And I think after Return of the Jedi, he wanted to make it. And studios were like, oh, George Lucas? Sure, you can make whatever you want. Yeah, go ahead and make it. And he's like, I got this duck movie. They were like, they didn't even listen. They were like, yep, whatever you want, George. So, because, you know, no one's going to turn him down again. I made Star Wars. We're not going to say no to him. So, and it just turned out not good.
Yeah.
Not good. You got Leah Thompson.
Don't even waste your time with it. Right. If you're curious,
honestly,
just go on YouTube and just watch some clips. That's it.
I'm so creeped out by the way Howard the Duck looks. That's why I haven't watched it. It literally.
Just,
I'm like,
just him blinking is just.
I know.
Like,
I literally like look at the pictures and I'm like, that's creepy. So no thanks. But
I'm hearing it was supposed to be. They had a better suit that was supposed to be animatronic, but they couldn't get it to work right. So, they went with just like a person in the duck costume, and it just doesn't. It's weird. It doesn't work.
Yeah, clearly. So, 1987, we have Superman 4 and Masters of the Universe. I see. The second I said Superman 4, I got like a that one.
I actually think Superman 3 is worse than 4. Okay. I'm one of those people. I think 3 is worse than 4. 4 is bad. It's very, very bad. I remember seeing this in the theater, and he just fights Nuclear Man.
Nuclear Man, yep.
It was just another Superman that was made from the sun. Somehow Lex Luthor has been in jail.
So
takes a strand of Superman's hair and clones him, I guess. I don't really...
So lazy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
It kind of sounds like Doomsday from
sure
this one movie.
Yeah, sure.
No, that was done much better. Okay. And it made Doomsday a character I all of a sudden, do we need to go back down this road again?
No. I just had to. I couldn't.
Well, the thing that's funny is that Superman goes around the world because lot of this was because this is right in the middle of the Cold War, so there's a lot of that's the backdrop, and he goes around the world trying to just get rid of all the nuclear weapons in the world. That's what because it's called the Quest for Peace. It's Superman 4, the Quest for Peace. He goes around, collects all the nuclear warheads in the world in this giant bag, in this gigantic net.
So that's so terrible.
Throws it into the sun. That's the thing I'll never forget from that. It was he just gets this gigantic net that's like the size of California, puts all the nuclear weapons in the
And once again, he had creative input on this. Christopher Reeve is just like, man, just stick to being in front of the camera. Don't go anywhere behind the camera, man.
Yeah. But hey, they greenlit it. They were like, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's clearly a cash grab. I mean, why not do one more? Hell, they may have done a fifth one. Who knows?
I guess, and we don't see him for nearly 2 years.
Yeah. Masters of the Universe. Any?
Don't like that either. A lot of people like that. I didn't
remember seeing it. No,
neither have I. So we'll skip that one.
Guy as a kid, the movie wasn't very good. Dolph Lundgren, though.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Dolph Lundgren was, Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Dolph Lundgren. 1988. Nothing really. Then we obviously hit the big one, which is Batman 1989. Gio, I'm going to let you take the reins on this one because I only feel like it's right. So take the floor.
Well, you said you watched it, Brian, right?
I did. So I can comment on something.
Okay.
Well, Keith, I got to ask you first. What was it like being in that theater and seeing that trailer?
This is I remember seeing the trailer. This is obviously it's a time where you had to watch. You only saw the trailer in the movies.
In the movie, yep.
And I don't remember. Obviously, it was sometime in '88. I'm sure when I saw it. I don't remember what it was. I think. I think maybe I want to say it might have been Ghostbusters 2. No, it might have been the same year. I don't know. I have no idea what I saw, but I just remember seeing this trailer. The thing I remember. And I actually watched it for this, and it's actually not a great trailer. Watching it now, but at the time, it was the most amazing thing you'd ever seen.
Right.
And I just remember seeing that image of just the inside of this warehouse, and you see bullets going across the bottom of this wall, and then the Batmobile bursts through.
Yeah,
man, my head exploded, and I'm like, what is this? Oh, this is the greatest thing you'd ever. Because Batman again. Only thing we knew about Batman was the '60 series. That's the only real lot.
How?
Yeah. Yes. And it was like this isn't that at all. Like and I hadn't read the Dark Knight Returns at this point, so I was a little kid. But so this was a whole new world for me. Like, what is this? Like Batman? He's all black. And he's beating people up. Like he's cool. He's mean.
He's cool now.
Yeah, right. It was something. It was something. So that was huge anticipation for this.
From what I read, the summer leading up to Batman was just.
It was all the talk.
A phenomenon.
It was all the talk, and it was the first time I think I waited in line to go into a theater. I'm pretty sure. That opening weekend. So me and my dad.
Yeah, so this movie, all right. Jack Nicholson's Joker for 25 years was the villain. He was the villain for comic book movies.
Yeah.
It's just to this day, it still holds up. It's still amazing. Does the movie hold up? What? 30 years later, 20 years, 30 years later,
you could
not as much as I hoped.
Yeah, same here.
It's definitely dated for the time. The Prince soundtrack music in the movie. It's just
I didn't like that. Yeah, I didn't like that. It was great at the time just because it was Prince music, but it does not. It's like, why is this in a Batman movie?
Right. I think it has to
thought
do
that
with
same
the
thing.
producer. Yeah, one of the producers, John Peters, I think, or something. Yeah, had a lot of say in that. But I mean, it's just to go back in that time and see, like, there are parts of it that hint for me how amazing it was for that time. You know, just Michael Keaton's Batman, the whole look of Tim Burton's Gotham City, you know, for that time, and just it being so groundbreaking in a sense that here is a serious take on a very grounded, complex, sort of violent superhero, a vigilante in Batman. You know, he doesn't kill. Well, in the
Oh, he does.
no. I meant, yeah, in the movies he kills, but like,
Yes, he does.
he's known for like not killing.
Oh, Batman himself, yeah.
Yeah, but in these movies, like,
Oh,
people
remorse.
forget. People forget, like, these movies, he kills.
There was a couple times I was like, "Is that person dead?" I was like, "Wait a minute, did they're dead?" Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And who knew Tim Burton could pull this off? You know, I you know, not many people.
This is one of those, it's a good point. You know, this is one of those times where I was kind of starting to get into paying attention to directors. So, like, Spielberg obviously was the guy that everyone knows. But being a fan, dude, maybe for 3 years after Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh God, I love that movie.
Yeah, right, exactly. And coming off of just a year, 2 years, maybe after Beetlejuice, I think, maybe a year,
2 years.
I can look it up.
2 years, maybe. Yeah, I can't remember.
I'll look it up.
That's pretty close, because that's the first thing I thought when I saw that it was Michael Keaton. I'm like, wait, that's Beetlejuice. Like, these guys playing Batman.
Beetlejuice. It was only a year. 88.
Was that 88? Wow. So it was 1 year. Wow. So they went straight into.
So during the production of Beetlejuice, he probably is like, "Hey, you're my Batman."
Well, I'd say this Burton. Yeah, exactly. Because Burton was attached for a long time. He had been attached for, I think, for probably about at least 5 years. Because I actually wrote about this in school as well, Batman. So, and he fought them hard on trying to keep it from being too much like the 60 series, because that's what they wanted. And he really fought to make it a more darker, a little more serious, to take it a little more seriously.
Right.
What they wanted to do with it. But then they cast Michael Keaton. They were like, "What do you want? Like, you cast this funny guy as in the role." But
you can just imagine Warner Bros. Like, "Okay, hold on, wait a minute. First, okay, we're gonna let you get serious home, but then you get Mr. Mom over
right?
here."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that was the first time I really started looking at like movie, like paying attention to production and looking at names and credits, and looking at producers and directors' names.
How aware were you of the hate during that time for Michael Keaton's casting?
I remember seeing people complain about it. I know there was like an article, because I remember there was, I want to say, Wall Street Journal, I think, which at that point was like, they don't write about movies, like, So I remember seeing it there, and people were talking about how it was going to be a failure because of that.
And that's why they rushed the first trailer, the very first teaser trailer. That's why it's so poorly made, because
we got
to put something together.
It got people really excited though. Like, wow, it had the right effect that they wanted. So, and like I said, just going into it, I mean, it was huge. And I remember the term was Batmania, is what they were calling it. And
well, I'm looking at it right now, and its budget was $35 million and pulled in a $411.5 million in 1989.
Right. Which was the biggest thing of all time.
That's a large chunk of money, and I'll say it. I've always wondered, because I just watched it last week for the first time.
What do you think? Now, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I always wondered why Jack Nicholson's name was before Keaton's in a
Right.
Batman movie. Now I know why.
Do you see how much he got paid too?
No.
He got paid. I think they paid him like $50 million to make this movie.
What
That
was
just
it? No. They gave him
Well, they gave him like
what's that? Back? No, not back pay. Residuals? What's the
from like revenue or on the back
Revenue?
end.
the revenue back pay type
Okay,
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think it wound up being around 50 plus million.
which for the longest time, I think maybe still. I mean, maybe Downey beat it, but it was
Yeah.
highest paid actor.
Salary for one movie
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah.
But very clear that to me, he was more of the star of that movie, in my opinion. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I'll argue with anyone that says that Joker wasn't
Oh, you're
almost the main character of that movie.
You're totally right.
I did like him. I to this day, that to me, I don't know if it's just the classic look that I like. That is one of my all-time favorite bat suits. I don't know if it's just like all black with just the little yellow.
Yellow, yeah.
But I love that bat suit. I love it. It's one of my favorite ones. Period. I don't know. Maybe it's just the coolness of just the all black and just a little bit of yellow. But yeah, it was good. It was definitely at times I was like, yeah, this was made in 1989. And but yeah, I think to me the thing that surprised me the most was just how much Jack Nicholson was in that movie. Like there was like I almost feel like there was almost rarely ever a frame without him in it. Like he was in it probably 90% of that movie, like in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I will also say, oh no, I'm forgetting his name. The gentleman that played Alfred.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know. Who was
Michael Goo. Go. Love
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Love him. He is like to me almost like the epitome of what Alfred is. Just like the second Michael Keaton would put a glass down, he would grab it immediately, like before it even touched the tape, like that type stuff.
I love. He had a line in it where he said, "I have no desire to spend my remaining years mourning the loss of old friends, or their sons." Which I love that.
I caught that one. I was like, oof, that's a line.
Yeah,
that was a line.
Yeah,
but no, I definitely now know why Nicholson's name was the top #1 billing of all the posters to this day. I can see what the hype was, especially back in that time period for this new Batman. So reinvented Batman.
And as we're gonna see in the 90s, like it is clear that Burton's tone for the movie was the right tone to have for a Batman, because later on, well, yeah, for that time, but also like, we'll talk about the 90s.
We'll get to Batman Returns because I think
we'll talk to what.
Don't hit the 90s yet.
We'll wait till we get to 90s because
I actually like Batman Returns more.
Oh, okay. Some hot take to leave. I'm so excited to go and rewatch these 90s Batman movies. Like, I cannot wait. I remember seeing these, and it's been so long since I've seen these. Yeah. But so there you go. Go.
Just real quick, I mentioned it last week, but it's the first movie I saw multiple times. I saw it 3 times in theater last summer.
Awesome.
It was an awesome summer because right in that time, I had this one, Indiana Jones and Last Crusade. I think it was maybe about a month earlier, and then you had Ghostbusters 2 a little bit later. So it was an awesome summer.
And look at us now, no movies, but I know, right? So
the last movie.
Yeah, God, what was the last movie we saw in theaters?
For me, it was Birds of Prey.
Yeah, I
Birds of
think it
Prey.
was for me, Birds of Prey too.
Yeah, dude, that or Sonic the Hedgehog for me. Yeah, so
Jeez, completely off topic, but yeah, there we go. That's our walk through the '80s with comic book movies. That was pretty good. I liked that. There was some good talk, and you guys,
called you.
this was all Gio's brainchild, and it's
Love it.
only going to get better as we walk through the '90s,
Or will it?
2000s, and the 2010s. I feel like the 90s is going to be a bloodbath probably between the three of us. Probably more than any other time period. Just
We
because
got some rough movies to get to before we get to the golden age of comic book movies.
So you're definitely going to want to come back and check out next Thursday's episode of Nerd Nation, because we are going to be walking through the 90s with comic book movies. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Gio. This topic was very fun, and I'm very excited now to do this moving forward, especially the coming weeks. But yeah, check us out on Apocaflix Movies, Nerd Nation, every Thursday. Check out all those streaming things over there. You got YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker. There's so many. Anywhere you can find a podcast. But for Apocaflix Movies, I'm Brian. This is Gio. That is Keith. And we will see you guys next time.